22 for July the 1st, 2014. There are two tropical storms in the eastern Pacific right now, Douglas and Elida, which have both formed on the same day. Two invests out there as well, 91L, which has a very high chance of developing into a tropical depression in the Atlantic, and 90W in the western Pacific, currently located over the Micronesian Islands. More on the Atlantic disturbance in around the 6-minute mark. Satellite imagery, let's take a look at the western Pacific first of all. Lots of little bits and pieces here and there tracking towards the Philippines. A little bit of a train of tropical disturbances, but 90W is the only one recognised in between Guam and the Micronesian island of Pohnpei. So that one's moving towards the west slightly, low chance of development at the moment. The eastern Pacific, there's Tropical Storm Douglas, quite a broad system that, but staying weak at the moment, more on that very shortly, and Elida further east, a more immediate threat towards Mexico right now, where we have tropical storm warnings in effect. The Atlantic 91L is located just north of the Bahamas, just east of Florida, and that storm could be a landfall threat to the eastern coast of the United States in the next few days, possibly as a strong tropical storm or greater. Looking at the Indian Ocean, fairly quiet at the moment. Generally a few disturbances here and there in the Bay of Bengal and around the southern tip of India, but nothing that's out of the ordinary whatsoever. No systems likely to form here in the next few days. So let's take a look at the current tracking information for the Eastern Pacific Tropical Storm Elida. First of all, formed very recently, winds of 50 miles per hour, pressures 1003 millibars, 17.3 degrees north, 104.1 degrees west. The storm's expected to move slowly at first and then begin to track further towards the west at perhaps a little bit more of a brisk pace at around the 72-hour mark, 3 days time from now. Not likely to become a hurricane, though one model does hint at possibly doing that, rapid intensification, but most of the models saying no hurricane in the next 5 days and a gradual weakening trend, possibly as it moves out to sea. Current warnings in effect, of course, for the coast of Mexico, tropical storm warnings for that region, heavy rain warnings for the areas of Jalisco, Colima and Michoacan, and Nayarit and Guerrero and inland areas under further rain warnings too, not as severe. But tropical storm warnings for the whole coastline there around that area of southwestern Mexico. Let's take a look now at Tropical Storm Douglas, which is also tropical storm intensity, 40 miles per hour. Staying weak, 1003 millibars. It's been active a little bit longer than Elida, with a position 17.5 degrees north, 114.2 degrees west. The storm's expected to move towards the west or west-northwest over the next few days. Maintaining intensity, though not doing much more than that, maybe 45 miles per hour, though unlikely to strengthen very much, and indeed weakening is expected 3 to 4 days from now to a tropical depression and then eventually as a remnant low in around 5 days time. So Tropical Storm Douglas, no threat to land. Let's take a look now at the sea surface temperatures. The Eastern Pacific, first of all, you can see around the area where Elida is, very warm waters, 29, 30 degrees Celsius, where Douglas is a little bit less, around 27, 28, maybe 26. Certainly as time progresses, waters will be cooling for Douglas, and obviously that will spell the end of that storm. The Western Pacific, very warm waters to the east of the Philippines, and that's been a feature for quite some time now. The South China Sea, also very warm, 30 degree plus. Where that invest is right now, water's temperatures around 30 degrees Celsius, certainly warm and ripe enough for development. Looking further towards the west, the Indian Ocean, again very warm along the coastlines of India, 30 degrees generally, out to sea around 28 or so as a minimum, except for south of Oman, where it is slightly cooler, but all areas of the North Indian Ocean are warm enough above that 26 degree threshold in Celsius. Let's take a look at the shear map then. This is the Atlantic. Higher shear towards the east of the current invest, 91L, though towards its northwest, where it is expected to go in the next few days, shear amounts are decreasing. To the west of Florida, high amounts of shear over there, but where the storm is right now, fairly low to moderate, not a huge issue, but it could interfere with development at least initially. So this is the Eastern Pacific. The two tropical storm icons of course denote Elida on the right hand side and Douglas on the left. And those two storms, Elida is in a high shear environment generally, and as if it moves towards land perhaps even just a little, it could really interfere with development. Douglas is not doing as bad, high shear towards its west, which it could be moving into, but in the vicinity of the storm it's fairly low, at least the immediate vicinity. The Western Pacific generally low amounts until you get near the equator, where that big pocket of high shear near the island of Palau. Where that invest is right now, low amounts of shear, possibly to moderate, but not too high where that is at the moment, but it is increasing in between those islands in Micronesia just north of the storm. But where it is right now, it is decreasing. As it moves towards the west, it could encounter more difficulties. This is the Atlantic, the water vapor imagery for the Atlantic. You can see a little bit of dryness over Cuba, over Hispaniola, and elsewhere on either side, moisture is quite ripe. Where 91L is there, you can see a little bit more drier air towards its north, the northeastern part of Florida into Georgia, but that storm is trying to get itself sorted out. We could see a tropical depression very soon there. This is Tropical Storm Elida. You can see this swirl towards the centre of the storm there, moving towards the northwest ever so slightly. The fact that we can see it means that the storm is having a little bit of trouble getting all its thunderstorms and organisations sorted out, and that's why it's been 50 miles per hour for around a day or so, and only was designated a tropical storm when its circulation closed earlier today. But you can see thunderstorms blowing off the top of the storm there, just towards the south mainly is the central core of that storm's thunderstorms. 91L is fairly similar in the fact that you can see this swirl towards the centre of it there, especially on that visible imagery you just saw, moving towards the southwest. You can see the thunderstorms associated with that moving over Florida, the southern coasts of Florida in particular, experiencing some heavy thunderstorms at the moment, as are the northern Bahamas. Computer models then for 91L. You can see here the intensity models, 3 of them predict a hurricane now, though the GFDL model takes it shy of hurricane status, but that is certainly something to watch out for. 3 of them predicting hurricane intensity. You can see the blue line there, I think that is the HWRF moving it towards the coast of North Carolina. The green line I think is the GDFL taking it just off the Outer Banks, but generally that is the track, and it could possibly affect more than one of those states from Florida to North Carolina. Shear comparisons, shear is expected to increase rapidly towards the end of that 5-day period. Until then, fairly moderate. Sea surface temperatures remaining fairly warm until days 4 and 5, when it will fall below 26 degrees, which is the threshold required. Until then, 28 degrees, certainly warm enough. And the relative humidity is remaining around average as well, on a gradual decline unless the GFDL is to be believed, where it is expected to rise a little bit and then have a bit more of a sudden fall. For the new storm Elida, the HWRF model predicts a brief hurricane, though that's not looking likely at the moment. The DSHP is more likely, or the LGEM, which has a fairly constant intensity, possibly a little bit of intensification as it moves towards the west. The blue line there has it looping towards the Mexican coast. That would be a bit of a nightmare for them, because a lot of rainfall could fall in that 3 or 4 day period where it's likely to stall there, if that's to be believed. But I think we'll go for the red line, where it will move out to sea ever so slightly and then begin to accelerate later on. Wind shear is falling on average, at least it will do in 2 days time at worst, and that means the storm could possibly develop further after that, and sea surface temperatures aren't going to be a problem for some time yet. Relative humidity is going to remain fairly high as well, at least for the next few days, before it will begin to fall down just a little bit, but not going to be an issue for the storm's development for the next few days is water vapor. So what happened on this day, on July the 1st? First day of the month, of course. 1966, Tropical Storm Becky formed in the Atlantic. In 1973, Tropical Storm Alice formed as well. 1980, Tropical Storm Darby formed in the Eastern Pacific. The next year, Tropical Storm Brett made landfall in Virginia. And in 1982, Tropical Storm Carlotta formed in the Eastern Pacific as well. Pictured there, 1973, Alice forming. That's Alice, possibly at its peak actually, near Bermuda. In 2001, Typhoon Durian made landfall in China, causing 78 fatalities. In 2004, Minjul made landfall in Taiwan and China. In 2008, Tropical Storm Douglas, funnily enough, formed in the eastern Pacific, and in 2010, Hurricane Alex made landfall in Mexico, causing 51 fatalities and $1.9 billion in damages. I remember tracking that one. You can track this storm and indeed any storms out there on the website force13.com/stormtracking.html is the main page for all the storm tracking information. 5 storms now in the eastern Pacific, none yet for the Atlantic, though the first could possibly be on the horizon. The western Pacific has seen 7 named storms so far, 2 typhoons, and the next storm name is going to be Neoguri. In the North Indian Ocean, Hudhud is the next name on the list after we saw Nanak a few weeks ago. Elsewhere around the world, should we see an Australian storm, the next name is Kate. The Southwest Indian Ocean will see Jirani as its next storm name, and in Fiji it's going to be Newt. But in the Southern Hemisphere we're not likely to see any development anytime soon. You can see the social media pages, Facebook and Twitter, on Force 13 as well. And indeed, this is the storm tracking page. You can see what it looks like right now. It's going to be a bit more active than what you saw there. And as said before, you can see Force 13 and all of its 6 outlets. The website is the main place to be, force13.com, or the video pages, YouTube and Dailymotion, Force 13 on both of those for all of the video updates, which will happen time and again, sometimes 12-hourly updates if it's really necessary. Facebook and Twitter, just search Force 13 on those and they will keep you regularly up to date as well, at Force 13 on Twitter. And for Tropical Weather Chat, you can add myself personally on Skype at Fool13. The next update will be tomorrow.